And that is not a conservative position, my friends. My politics have not changed, but I am reacting to politics that have. And this is yet another example of how the woke invert the very thing that used to make liberals liberals. Olympic surfing exposes whitewashed native Hawaiian roots. Yeah, the Olympics added surfing this year. Good. Surfers deserve to be recognized as athletes. I'm sorry. What I meant to say is, no, that's cultural appropriation. The AP says that for Hawaiians, probably all two of them, including surfing in the Olympics, is an extension of the racial indignity seared into the history of the game and their homeland when white outsiders took over their spiritual art form. Or just people having fun in the ocean.
It's not just movies under pressure anymore. Now sports have clearly entered the spotlight too. Over time, several athletes and sports figures have found themselves at the center of controversy simply for refusing to follow what many call woke expectations. But Bill Maher refused to play along. He cut straight through the noise with sharp clarity and confidence. What followed became a moment viewers won't easily forget. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that now, and let's jump right into the story together.
The director of the opening ceremony was fired hours before the event because they found out there was a Holocaust joke in a comedy routine he did decades ago. Well, you know, context is everything. Obviously, it didn't strike people as beyond the pale at the time. Young people have to stop flattering themselves that they're Nostradamus and would have foreseen, had they been around then, everything that's unacceptable now. And for further context, Mel Brooks wrote one of the most successful musicals of all time around the song Springtime for Hitler.
Some critics argue the outrage culture never really moves on. It stays alert, constantly searching for its next headline-making target, and patience is part of the strategy. Years of tweets, archived interviews, forgot posts, even private remarks can suddenly resurface. Age doesn't matter. Context often disappears. All it takes is a single sentence that can be reshaped, reframed, and amplified. Once that moment is found, attention intensifies fast. Public judgment can shift from a lifetime of work to one controversial clip frozen in time. That's what unfolded with a prominent Olympic Games director. Investigators combed through his past, determined to uncover something damaging. Eventually, they discovered material they believed could spark outrage. And when they revealed it, the reaction spread rapidly across platforms worldwide. Supporters debated fairness, critics demanded consequences, and the story became a global talking point almost overnight, dominating headlines and online discussion.
Why do we allow the people who just want to always win? Days before that firing, the opening ceremony's musical director was also forced out because someone dug up an interview with him from 1994 where he admitted to bullying classmates as a child. As a child. Remember when your teacher used to try and scare you by saying, "This is going to go on your permanent record"? Yeah. No longer an empty threat now.
According to critics of cancel culture, once attention locks onto someone, pressure rarely eases. The process intensifies until public perception shifts dramatically against the individual. Past comments resurface, early mistakes are revisited, and even childhood behavior can be pulled into the spotlight. The focus often centers on constructing a narrative that fits present outrage. Context fades into the background. Personal growth is overlooked. Time itself seems irrelevant. What matters most is the storyline being presented today. Observers frequently point out the irony within this pattern. Those leading the criticism often present themselves as if their own pasts were spotless and flawless. Imperfect moments are ignored or forgotten. Meanwhile, the person under scrutiny faces microscopic examination and demands for absolute consistency. Critics argue that this creates an unrealistic standard no one truly meets. The result, they say, is less about accountability and more about control over public perception itself.
And the creative director of the entire shebang, of the whole Olympics, got shit-canned because he once made a fat joke in a private conversation. This is called a purge. It's a mentality that belongs in Stalin's Russia. How bad does this atmosphere we are living in have to get before the people who say cancel culture is overblown admit that is in fact an insanity that is swallowing up the world? Where did we get this crowd? I'm back, not the audience. I'm back. They're still. And that is not a conservative position, my friends. My politics have not changed, but I am reacting to politics that have. And this is yet another example of how the woke invert the very thing that used to make liberals liberals. Snitches and that's not being liberal.
Bill Maher speaks bluntly when addressing what he views as modern outrage culture. He describes a climate where individuals constantly monitor public figures, searching for missteps that can be exposed and amplified. In his perspective, the driving force is no longer accountability but influence and control over narratives. Evidence is collected, preserved, and released strategically to generate maximum reaction. Maher argues this approach conflicts with traditional liberal principles he associates with open debate and tolerance. Historically, he says, liberalism encouraged discussion, disagreement, and personal growth over time. Yet he believes a newer ideological trend functions differently. Instead of inviting dialogue, it often shuts conversations down quickly. Rather than promoting understanding, it pressures individuals toward agreement. Maher's broader claim is that this shift represents something more rigid than classical liberal thought. To him, the change signals a transformation in political culture that prioritizes enforcement over open exchange of ideas.
The Associated Press is a real news organization, yeah? So why am I reading this headline? Olympic surfing exposes whitewashed native Hawaiian roots. Yeah, the Olympics added surfing this year. Good. Surfers deserve to be recognized as athletes. I'm sorry. What I meant to say is, no, that's cultural appropriation. The AP says that for Hawaiians, probably all two of them, including surfing in the Olympics, is an extension of the racial indignity seared into the history of the game and their homeland when white outsiders took over their spiritual art form. Or just people having fun in the ocean.
Some critics say it's almost humorous how easily ordinary moments get reinterpreted through a political lens. People laughing, relaxing, enjoying a day at the beach suddenly become symbols of something deeper or ideological. Simple fun is reframed as cultural commentary. The language used often sounds sophisticated and carefully crafted, designed to appear thoughtful and convincing on the surface. Yet when the complex phrasing and dramatic tone are removed, the underlying message can feel surprisingly thin. Observers describe it as style replacing substance, performance replacing reality. The focus shifts from understanding events to persuading audiences to see hidden meaning everywhere. Elevated wording transforms routine experiences into controversies that demand attention. But critics argue that beneath the elaborate framing, the significance frequently collapses. What is presented as profound or transformative often appears, upon closer inspection, to be far less substantial than initially suggested, leaving audiences questioning the true depth of the claim.
I must say, of all the violations of the woke penal code, cultural appropriation just might be the dumbest of all. First of all, there are 25,000 islands in the Pacific. How do we know a Hawaiian was the first to stand on a board in the water? It seems like something anyone in any ocean would eventually get around to. And if you're a surfer, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, or in between. You all taste the same to sharks.
Ma argues that accusations of cultural appropriation often contradict the reality of how societies naturally evolve. He questions why appreciation is sometimes treated as wrongdoing in an increasingly connected world. Throughout history, cultures have influenced one another through art, music, food, fashion, and shared ideas. This exchange has never been unusual. It has driven creativity, innovation, and mutual understanding across generations. People adopt elements they admire not to erase their origins, but to celebrate and participate in them. Ma suggests that this blending often reflects curiosity and respect rather than disrespect. It signals openness to experiences beyond one's own background. However, he believes critics sometimes frame these interactions as violations instead of opportunities for connection. In his view, restricting cultural exchange does not preserve tradition. Instead, it risks isolating cultures, limiting growth, and weakening the shared human experiences that allow traditions to adapt, evolve, and remain meaningful across time and place for future generations everywhere.
But let's say a Hawaiian did invent surfing. Should he or she have kept it to themselves? Most of human history is a horror story, but the good parts are about different groups coming together and sharing. It's sort of the whole point of the Olympics, which itself comes from Greece, where wrestling was invented as a way for completely heterosexual men to get to know each other. Badminton has roots in India. Tennis comes from France, skiing from Scandinavia, and Taekwondo from Korea. Judo was appropriated from the Far East and skateboarding from the far out.
Ma emphasizes that creation does not require permanent ownership by a single group. Human progress has always relied on ideas, traditions, and innovations moving beyond their origins to reach wider audiences. Knowledge spreads, influences multiply, and creativity expands when people share what inspires them. Today's world operates more like an interconnected community than ever before. Technology, travel, and communication have reduced barriers that once separated cultures. Individuals learn from one another instantly, adapting influences and building upon them in new ways. Ma argues that this process strengthens culture rather than weakening it. Traditions remain alive by evolving and connecting with new generations. Cultural exchange expands understanding and creates common ground among diverse communities, instead of reinforcing rigid boundaries. Shared experiences encourage respect and cooperation. In his view, embracing influence across cultures reflects a broader human story, one defined by learning, adaptation, and a shared pursuit of meaning that ultimately connects people everywhere.
What is this new rule that the first thing to do, that the first to do something, are the only ones who get to have it? Jewish people spent most of their history wandering, but when they see other people milling around, they don't say, "Can you not? That's sort of our thing." You know, change is not synonymous with progress. Newer doesn't automatically mean better. This new idea that each culture must remain in its own separate silo is not better. It's not progress.
Ma argues that the idea people should avoid learning from other cultures ignores how civilization actually develops. Human progress has always depended on observation, exchange, and adaptation. Every major advancement exists because individuals borrowed ideas, refined them, and passed them forward. Declaring cultural interaction off-limits dismisses centuries of shared influence and mutual growth. According to Ma, rigid ideological rules often replace practical thinking and natural curiosity. Instead of encouraging openness, they create hesitation. People become worried about saying the wrong thing, wearing the wrong thing, or appreciating the wrong tradition. That atmosphere, he suggests, discourages connection rather than promoting respect. Fear does not bring societies together, it separates them. Ma believes this mindset undermines the spirit of learning that allows cultures to interact and evolve naturally. When curiosity is restricted, progress slows, understanding weakens, and the collaborative energy that drives human advancement begins to fade over time for communities everywhere.
And in fact, it's messing with one of the few ideas that still really does make this melting pot called America great. Not everything is about oppression. Stealing natural resources from indigenous peoples, yes, of course, that is exploitation. But I swear not one Beach Boys song resulted in any Hawaiian having less waves to surf. Not one African record buyer stopped purchasing local music after Paul Simon made Graceland. But lots of white buyers in America were turned on to and then bought African music. And today, Korean boy bands make Western-style music. You don't get to number one singing this.
Ma raises a question that highlights what critics see as an inconsistency. When Korean artists perform Western music, they are widely celebrated for their talent, creativity, and global influence. Their success is praised as cultural exchange and artistic evolution. Few question their right to explore genres that originated elsewhere. Yet when Western performers adopt elements from other traditions, the reaction can be very different. What is called appreciation in one context is labeled appropriation in another. This contrast, observers argue, creates a clear double standard. Cultural exchange appears acceptable in one direction but controversial in the reverse. Such selective interpretation produces uneven expectations about who may explore, adapt, or participate. Ma suggests that culture historically spreads through interaction, not restriction. If shared expression is meant to connect people, inconsistent rules risk creating division instead. A genuine exchange, he argues, functions best when influence moves freely between communities rather than being limited by selective boundaries or expectations.
And that's the great thing about cultural mixing. It makes things better for everyone. BTS can be a hit in America, and I can get kimchi on a taco. Isn't that better than everyone walling itself off from outsiders? I thought walls were supposed to be bad. But we're living now in a world where straight actors are told they can't play gay roles, and white novelists aren't allowed to imagine what it would be like to be a Mexican immigrant, even though trying to inhabit the life of someone else is almost the very definition of empathy, the bedrock of liberalism. And by the way, if anyone deserves to bitch about stealing in the Olympics, it's the horses in the equestrian events who have to watch humans get medals for everything they do.
Ma's broader argument focuses on what he views as a contradiction within modern outrage culture. A movement that presents itself as promoting fairness and inclusion can, at times, create an atmosphere of surveillance and judgment. Instead of encouraging exploration, it may discourage curiosity. Rather than celebrating cultural interaction, it can frame exchange as risk. And instead of reducing division, it sometimes intensifies disagreement. Ma emphasizes that progress has historically emerged from openness, dialogue, and the willingness to learn from one another. Cultures expand when they interact, not when they remain isolated. Individuals develop through experience, reflection, and correction, not through fear of imperfection. Societies strengthen when ideas are debated rather than restricted. He argues that trust grows where discussion is allowed and perspectives can be examined openly. In this view, common sense and cooperation become more productive than rigid conformity. Ma ultimately suggests that connection, understanding, and shared learning form the foundation of lasting social progress. When communication remains open and exchange continues freely, communities gain resilience, knowledge expands, and the potential for collective advancement becomes stronger over time for everyone involved.